Welcome one and all back to the Viper's Nest. Question for you. Do you need a palate cleanser after Star Wars The Acolyte Episode 3? Because boy howdy, I sure do. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some of the best Star Wars. But before that, The Acolyte continues the trend of bad writing. I do have one question though. Hey, so Star Wars Acolyte, are you trying to convince me that the Jedi as an institution suck? Because you don't need to convince me of that. I've thought that for decades at this point, ever since the prequel trilogy. But I always thought that was due to the fact that the Jedi were incredibly flawed and incompetent and not, actively evil and malicious like, you're trying to go with. You know what I mean? Let's face it. The Jedi of the prequel trilogy, as an institution, were incompetent. They didn't manage to detect the Sith Lord that was standing in the room full of Jedi Masters. Now, here's the thing. At least in old canon, there are ways for Darksiders to cloak themselves from the senses of the Jedi. Like Darth Zana, who we will probably talk about in a little bit, did that. But here's the thing. Darth Zana was one of the most accomplished Sith spellcasters there ever was. And when she was cloaking herself to sneak into the Jedi Temple, she deliberately avoided any places that might have Masters because she was trying to get to the archives. And even then, she had a lot of trouble maintaining that dark side cloak. So I know Palpy was powerful, but cloaking yourself from the Jedi, not a fucking easy thing to do. And they still never noticed. Anyway, that's my spiel. Let's move on. So, the best Star Wars. What are we talking about today? Well, you can see him right there on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Darth Bane, the man who instituted the Rule of Two and is, in my opinion, the best Star Wars character ever. And he's also the Star Wars character that I know for a fucking fact Disney does not have the balls to try and do his story, let alone do his story right. Because you cannot, in Disney these days, have the strongest white male protagonist. Now, is Darth Bane white? Yeah, I think so. It's maybe a little hard to tell with this particular piece of official artwork from back in the day, but I think most people would look at that and go like, yeah, it's probably a white dude. And in all of his other official art, he's generally portrayed as fair-skinned. So, it's one of those things where, funny enough, his skin tone never mattered, which, real quick, one more sidebar here. Just a funny little parallel between this day and age and back in the old days. Before the dark times, before the Disney. So, if Disney tried to do Darth Bane, they'd probably race swap him, right? That's on par with Disney. But, here's the thing. Back when the Darth Bane books by Drew Karpyshyn were coming out, people really didn't mind race swapping all that much, so long as, the character's ethnicity was not a direct plot point. So, to go back to one of my old videos when I talked about Netflix Resident Evil, you could say a lot of shit about that show, but I don't think anybody could disagree with Lance Reddick as Wesker unless they are actually outright racist. But the thing was, A, Lance Reddick was a good actor, and B, Wesker's skin tone never once mattered to the story. So it was fine, at least in my opinion. And that's how a lot of people back in the old days of 2006, 2007 also saw things. So when the Darth Bane novels were coming out, there was discussion online about if we got a Darth Bane movie or a TV show, who would we want to portray Darth Bane? And the names that came up the most were Christopher Judge, who we now, I think, mostly know as Kratos, and Michael Clark Duncan. May he rest in peace. That man was taken from us far too soon. Now, these guys, they are both black. Darth Bane, in artwork is not, but you know what? Who fucking cared? Because either of those two actors, pretty much everybody agreed, would fucking kill it as Darth Bane. But if they tried to do it nowadays, even if they did get a good actor like Christopher Judge or Michael Clark Duncan, if he were still alive, to play Darth Bane, the sad state is that even if it were a perfectly benign thing, getting an amazing actor to play this character whose skin tone never mattered, you know for a fact everybody would be giving it a little side eye and going like, is Disney doing this because they actually want these good actors to play this character, or are they doing it for DEI points? And that's fucking sad. Anyway, let's get into the meat of it. Darth Bane. Who was he and what did he do? Who was his daddy and what did he do? Well, we'll get to that. I'm not gonna dive too terribly deep into like Darth Bane's origin story and backgrounds and stuff like that because well, there's other videos on the YouTubes that are of much better quality than mine, which is not hard. I'm literally a guy sitting in a car talking to a still image on a cell phone. But also I'm not going to dive into it because honestly, you should really read the Darth Bane trilogy, and by extension, if you can get a hold of it, the Book of Sith by Daniel Wallace, which contains some of Darth Bane's in-universe writings, to really get a feel for who this guy was. But you know, I'll give you the quick truncated version that's going to leave out a whole lot of shit. So, Darth Bane was born in, I think in 1032, 1032 BBY, so 1,000 years before Episode 4 in the Battle of Yavin. He was born to a horrifically abusive dad because his mother died in childbirth, and he was raised on a mining world called Apatros. And on Apatros, they were mining this ore called cortosis, which is one of those, like, rare / not so rare lightsaber-proof minerals out there. And it was wartime, so the Republic needed a lot of it. And the world on which Bane, who was then known as Dessel, was raised, the company he was working for, is basically like one step above slavery. Can't actually be slavery because the Old Republic had anti-slavery laws, but the Outer Rim Ore Works got around that by being like, well, you know, we are paying our workers. It was just they set up a shitty system that was essentially meant to keep their workers in debt forever, so they can never leave. So it was basically slavery with a small paycheck. So Des was born and raised on this world to his abusive father, Hurst. His father was an abusive alcoholic because Des's mother had died in childbirth. He blamed Des for it. Very toxic relationship. Thankfully, Hurst dies before the beginning of the story. So it's just Dessel working away, mining cortosis. And here's the thing. Mining cortosis is incredibly hard because, like I said, it's basically a lightsaber-proof material that's very good at absorbing and dispersing energy, like thermal energy, like blaster bolt and lightsaber and shit, which is why it was so highly valued by the military. That also meant that this cortosis was borderline fucking impossible to mine. You had to do it the hardest possible way by literal, brute, physical force. So the miners basically had to carry around these insanely heavy pneumatic jackhammers and then just hammer away at this fucking mineral for hours and hours on end to even get like a small chunk of it. And because the Outer Rim Ore Works company was so shit, they got like the bottom of the bargain bin tools to do this. It was literally less expensive for them to just replace their shitty equipment rather than repair it or sink money into like better equipment. So they had to wield these heavy-ass jackhammers by hand, which meant that Dessel got fucking swole working in these mines. And Dessel, he ended up becoming a big dude. I think he said in the books he was like 2 meters tall even, which I think puts him at like 6'7". And that's about the same height as Darth Vader in his armor, just to put that into Star Wars perspective for you. So Dessel was a big motherfucker. And he was also incredibly naturally talented in the Force, to the point where he could use the Force, and he didn't even know what the fuck the Force really even was. So this got him out of quite a few bad situations during his time in the mines. So anyway, at the beginning of the book, he gets into a fight with this guy who was a friend of his dad's. fight ends badly. Des bites off this guy's thumb. Gets sent home early because, well, you're not supposed to be doing that shit in the mines. So anyway, Des goes home, like showers off, goes to the bar, and lo and behold, there's going to be a Republic freighter showing up later today to pick up a shipment of cortosis, which means there's going to be Republic soldiers on the premises, which means more people for the card shark named Dessel to fleece out of their hard-earned credits. Now, this is another really shit thing that the Outer Rim Works Company does, is they put a cap at the gambling tables to make sure no miner can, like, win big, pay off all their debts to the company at once, and then fuck off to wherever they want to go. But you know what? Money is money, and Des likes money. So he gets into a card game with a bunch of these Republic guys, ends up winning really big due to his force sensitivity. One of the ensigns who was there playing cards gets fucking drunk, gets all pissy at Des for winning, and as Des leaves, this guy and like two of his homies attack Des in a back alley, and Des ends up killing one of them. So then he goes back to the bar, which is proprietored by like his one actual friend on this fucking world, a bartender named Gorshik. And he's like, fuck, Gorshik, I killed this Republic guy, what the fuck do I do? They're gonna throw me onto an actual prison world if I go down for this. And Gorshik's like, well, since I'm a mildly shady bartender, you know, I got connections in the Republic, but, you know, that's not gonna help you because you're gonna be wanted for murder pretty soon. But I also have connections with the Sith army. So would you like to stay here and go to jail, or are you cool joining the Sith? Now, the Sith and the Republic have been at war for a long fucking time now, which is why cortosis is so highly valuable. But Des is like, go to Prison Planet or possibly die fighting for the Sith. I think I'll pick the Sith. So they smuggle Des off the world, get him put in with this Sith infantry group called the Gloomwalkers, where Des, being the big badass force sensitive that he is, continues to be a big badass force sensitive, and he leads his group, the Gloomwalkers, to quite a few victories, and then he gets stuck on this fucking suicide mission where the Sith have to take this listening outpost so like the main body of the Sith army can come through this fucking valley. Couple of problems here. One, the outpost is very heavily fortified, so that's a problem. Two, this outpost has to be taken down sneakily because it's going to be a fucking bloodbath if they try to assault it directly. And three, they can't use their communicators because it's a listening post, which means they're intercepting radio communications and shit. So the lieutenant of Des's group is like, well, I guess we're all gonna have to go fucking die because I'm too much of a little bitch to call up the higher-ups and be like, hey, so we can't actually do this. We're at least gonna need some help. No, this guy decides it's better just fucking die instead. So Des is like, well, that's bullshit. I don't want to die, so we're gonna have to figure this out. So he knocks out his lieutenant, leaves him tied up in a tent, and Des is like, so I basically just committed mutiny, but we're going to take this listening outpost, and we're going to do it our way. We're either going to win, in which case, yay, or we're all going to fucking die, and it's not going to matter. And the rest of the Gloomwalkers, they fucking love Des, so they're like, alright, we're rolling with Des, let's do this. So the plan is they're going to sneak up on this listening outpost, complete radio silence. The sign to attack the listening outpost is going to be the first shot fired from one of the snipers, and that's going to be the sign to the rest of the Gloomwalkers to charge. And while they're doing this, they're just going to go ahead and radio to the main Sith force that, like, hey, we got the listening outpost, it's done, you can roll through. So what they're essentially trying to do is they say they're going to take this listening outpost, and then hopefully they are going to take this listening outpost because it's going to take a few hours for the main Sith force to get there anyway. So they send the signal, they go to the listening outpost. Des is with the scouts, one of his homies, Lucia, is like the designated sniper. They're looking at all this shit on this listening outpost, and they spot these hovercrafts, which are mounted with basically like the Star Wars equivalent of like the Browning M2 machine gun on these fucking hovercraft. And Des is like, well, fuck, if those things get in the air, they're just going to mow down our ground forces like it's fucking nothing. So they're looking at it, and Des is like, hey, can you take out the gunners and the pilots of those things all in one go? And Lucia's like, no, actually, that's like fucking impossible. So Des is like, fucking give me that rifle, let me have a look. So he's looking, he's charting out all these different shots, knowing that his first shot is going to be the sign for the rest of the people to charge. So Des is like, well, there's only one thing to do here, fuck it. So he starts shooting. Knocks down one guy, knocks down another guy, and then while he's scoping for more targets, he notices one of the Republic guys drop something at their feet and starts covering his face. This guy basically dropped a fucking flash grenade, which Des is looking at through the fucking sniper scope, the flashbang goes off and he gets blinded. But Des has got the Force on his side, goddammit. So he, like, taps into his fucking third eye ability and just, like, using Force senses alone, mows down the rest of these guys on the rooftop. I think he takes out, like, 7 guys in the space of 2 seconds while being blinded by a flash grenade, which is fucking incredible. So Des knocks out all of the air support, the Gloomwalkers charge in, take the fucking base, bippity-boppity-boo, the day is won. And the Gloomwalkers are like, fuck yeah, we just did the impossible, everyone's gonna love us. So they go back to camp, turns out the lieutenant fucking got loose and is like, hey, so you knocked me out, Des, that's insubordination and mutiny, I'm tossing you in the fucking pit. And the rest of the Gloomwalkers are like, fucking excuse us? And they're like putting hands on guns and are about to fucking throw down with like this lieutenant and his security guards that showed up. But Des, he likes his people, so he was like, yeah, I did this. I know, I understand. I'll take the fall for it. Let the rest of the Gloomwalkers go. They were following my lead, and they got the mission done, so it's not their fucking fault. So the lieutenant agrees, throws Des in a literal hole in the ground. Des is in there for a few days, and then a Sith Lord named Lord Kopex shows up and is like, hey, so I done heard about what you did with that sniper rifle. Sounds like you might got some Force stuff going on, man. You want to stay here in this hole, or do you want to come get trained up to be a legit Sith Lord? And Des is obviously like, no, I don't want to fucking stay in the hole. Take me to the Sith Academy, goddammit. So he takes Des to the Sith Academy. And when they get there, before they go inside, Kopex is like, hey, so it's like Sith tradition. You get to take a new name when you start becoming a Sith Lord. What do you want to be called? And Des is like, yeah, all right, call me Bane. And now most people are going to think like, oh, yes, I was born to the dark side. No, it's not that Bane. So when Des was growing up with his dad, Hurst, called Des the bane of his existence because Des' mom died in childbirth and Hurst was a shitty father. So this is like Bane literally taking control of his own narrative. He's like, I'm going to make this name mine and I'm going to make it fucking mean something. So he starts training in the Sith Academy, does pretty damn good, right up until during a sparring exercise he kills one of the other students in like a fit of Force rage. And then that leads Des, now Bane, to realize that he also killed his dad with the Force. And this fucks with his head a little bit because, one, you're not really supposed to kill other students at the Sith Academy because every student at this Sith Academy was a potential Sith Lord. But a lot of the times the teachers are like, well, I mean, if it means elevating one of our students to like higher power than what those two normally combined would have been, we're willing to let it slide. So they let it slide, but Bane is still kind of fucked up about it, knowing he killed this other guy and also his dad. So he starts losing power, ends up getting his ass whooped in the sparring ring by a Zabrak, which is a Darth Maul race, if you don't know your races. His name is Cyrac. He whoops Bane's ass, and this leads Bane to, like, quote-unquote, lose all of his power. So he kind of temporarily becomes a husk of his former self. Like, the teachers have kind of just abandoned him. The other students are ostracizing him. It's all going bad for Bane. But then a fresh shipment of students shows up. Among them is a former Jedi named Githany, and she looks at Bane and realizes, like, damn, this guy's a fucking badass. Why the hell is he walking around hunched over and spending all of his time in the archives? So she helps him see that, no, you didn't lose your power, you're just kind of blocking it because you feel bad about what you done did. Just stop fucking feeling bad about it. So Bane, with her help, starts rebuilding his power. He spends a lot of time in the archives of the Korriban Academy learning about all the old school Sith and how they did things. And then he convinces the Sith Blade Master, Kasim, to start training him again in lightsaber combat. So Bane, like, flies under the radar for a long time. He's using the archives, he's using Githany, he's using Kasim. Slowly, he starts building himself up, and he comes back bigger and badder than ever. And then finally, he challenges Cyrac again, absolutely whoops Cyrac's ass, but doesn't actually kill him because there's really no point to killing him, Bane understands at this point. But Githany's like, why didn't you kill him? He's like the top preppy guy at this academy, and if you took him down, we could be the top dogs. And Bane's like, I literally don't give a fuck about any of that crap. I just want to be powerful. So through his learnings in the Sith Academy, slowly he starts to understand that the Sith nowadays, the Brotherhood of Darkness is a stupid parody of what the Sith used to be. It's like, we're not supposed to be an army like the Jedi. This is all bullshit. Everyone is not equal in the dark side of the Force. Lord Skier Khan, which I'm 99% sure is a fucking reference to Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. That just makes me fucking laugh. Anyway, so Bane's like, y'all's a bunch of idiots. You're never gonna beat the Jedi this way. What you're doing is fucking stupid. Why? Fuck it. I'm out. So Bane just hijacks one of the ships and just leaves because he understands that the Sith are fucking lame now. So anyway, he wanders off and he comes across, eventually, a holocron of Darth Revan and learns a whole lot of shit from Darth Revan, which then elevates Bane's power to an even more fucking ludicrous degree, like far beyond what anyone in the Brotherhood of Darkness could ever possibly hope to achieve. So there's some politicking going on behind the scenes back at the Sith Academy. Eventually, they decide that, hey, like, we love him or not, we need Bane to win this war that we're now fighting on this planet called Ruusan against the Jedi's Army of Light. So fucking Khan is like, yeah, so like, go get Bane. Just go get Bane. Go get him. Someone go get him. So they send fucking Kasim the Blade Master. And this is another bit of a trial for Bane because he actually likes Kasim, because Kasim is like the one teacher of the Sith Academy who didn't just abandon him after his loss to Cyrac and actually helped him out a lot, including Kasim giving Bane the lightsaber that belonged to Kasim's former master, which is a curved hilt lightsaber, which we'll get to why that's fucking cool a little bit later. So Kasim shows up and Bane's like, look man, I don't want to fight you. I'm already in the market for an apprentice to, get my new Sith going on. Like, you want in? Because, like, Kasim, like I said, actually liked Bane and helped him a lot. And, like, when, like, Bane tested him a little bit, like, during one of their sparring matches, Bane willingly conceded because he was exhausted and knew that he couldn't defeat Kasim at that point. And Kasim's like, yo, like, why'd you stop? Like, you gotta keep fighting. Like, there's no glory in just surrendering. And Bane hits him with a quote from one of the old Sith. And I quote, "Honor is a fool's prize. Glory is of no use to the dead." And Kasim's like, it's fucking wise words, man. Like, can I quote you on that? And Bane's like, yeah. But inside he's like, if you'd actually spent any time in the fucking archives learning about the old Sith, you realize that's not my fucking quote, but hey, whatever. So Bane tries to convert Kasim to his way of thinking, and unfortunately, Kasim has already drank the Kool-Aid of the Brotherhood of Darkness, so he's not having any of it. So Bane's like, alright, fuck, I guess I have to kill you now. So they fight, and Darth Bane actually mostly loses, because Kasim is the fucking Blade Master. And Darth Bane, while he is very good at lightsaber combat at this point, he's not a fucking Blade Master. So they fight in this temple. Bane ends up getting kicked down the stairs. Kasim is standing up at the top, and he's like, yo, like, I taught you everything you know about lightsaber combat, but trust me, pal, I haven't taught you everything I know about lightsaber combat. And what Kasim did was he was using a double-bladed lightsaber, which Bane had been training against for months, but then he splits it in half and starts dual-wielding single-blade lightsabers, and Bane has no fucking idea what to do against this. So Bane, starts charging up a Force Blast, and Kasim is like, dude, one of the first fucking things I taught you about lightsaber combat is to wrap yourself in, a Force bubble shield to protect yourself from Force attacks. And Bane's like, yeah, you can shield yourself, but you know what you can't shield? The fucking temple you're standing on. So he hits the temple with a Force push and just collapses the whole thing on Kasim and fucking kills him. So Bane hops in the ship, goes back to the Brotherhood of Darkness to see why the fuck they sent Kasim after him, and he, starts actually helping the Brotherhood of Darkness. Like, hey, I learned all this dope-ass shit from Darth Revan's holocron. Let me show you this fucking thing called a Force Storm. So he literally conjures a storm, which, does lightning strikes and shit, and starts burning down the fucking forest that the Jedi are hiding in. He's like, yep, this is it. We're gonna wipe out the Jedi right fucking here and now. But then, unfortunately, Lord Khan breaks the connection between all these Sith Lords that are doing this Force Storm, which causes it to stop. It's like, all right, the Force is on fire. Let's, hop in the ground transports and go meet him man to man. And Bane's just like, you fucking idiot. Why? Why would you do this? We could have killed him right then and there. Why are you trying to fight them on the ground? This is not a ground war. This is not how the Sith are supposed to fight. You're fucking stupid. Turns out, yes, Khan is fucking stupid because the Jedi actually start pushing back and shit. So Bane calls in some air support from orbit, which unfortunately means that the Jedi forces in orbit are also going to get on the ground. Khan comes back and is like, "Oh, Darth Bane, why did you do this? Like, what, you fucking called in the fighters, which let their reinforcements get on the ground? Why?" And Bane is inside, is like, "Well, you know, if you just did what I fucking told you in the first place, we wouldn't have had to do that." But on the outside, he senses Khan trying to, like, get into his head with the Force magic. And Bane is so powerful at this point, he's having none of that shit. But he does, like, a little puppet show where he's like, "Oh, Lord Khan, I'm so sorry. Oh, how can I make this up to you? Oh, look, here's this plan for this thing called the Thought Bomb that we can use to wipe out the Jedi. Here you go, please have it." And Khan's like, "Yes, good, I forgive you, Bane. Yes, give me that weapon of mass destruction. Wonderful, we're going to use this." And then Khan fucks off. Bane gets up off the floor where he'd been kneeling, like, brushes his knees on, and just goes like, "This fucking weak-ass idiot." So he essentially tricked Lord Khan into using this ritual called the Thought Bomb, which is going to require, like, all of the Sith to, like, pool their power into this thing. It's going to blow up, and it's going to suck in all of the spirits of everybody within the blast range. So Bane's like, "Yeah, I got an hour to get out of the radius of that motherfucker," so he starts heading out. So the Sith all go into these caves underground, start setting up this Thought Bomb. The Jedi General at the time, Lord Hoth, was like, "Yeah, I can sense they're doing some fucky shit down there. But we can't let them go, otherwise this war is going to continue. And we can't just send all of our forces down there, because then all of our forces will die along with the Sith. But we have to take a force that's big enough to force them to do the exact thing we don't want them to do, which is blow up the Thought Bomb." So Lord Hoth picks 500 of the peoples who are, like, willing to go down there with him on this suicide mission. The rest of them have to stay out of the blast range and make sure no Sith stragglers escape. So they go down there, Thought Bomb blows up, it's bad for fucking everybody. But the Brotherhood of Darkness is now gone, either with the Thought Bomb or picked off as stragglers by the Jedi who are outside the blast range. So they think the Sith are now extinct. And Bane is just on his way out to go do his Rule of Two thing. So as he's cruising along, you know, just being like, "Yeah, like, I wiped out the Brotherhood. The Jedi don't know I exist. The galaxy is my oyster at this point, baby, let's go." He comes across a little girl who would become his apprentice. Now, this is Darth Zana, and her origin story is, God, it is so fucking sad. So, Zana and her cousin Darovit were on this shipment of children who were getting flown in to be trained by the Jedi to help out with their war against the Sith. The aircraft they were on ends up getting shot down. Zana and her cousin were separated, and Zana comes across this race of animals native to Ruusan called the Bouncers. They're these fucking adorable, floaty, green, fuzzy bouncy balls that are, like, Force attuned, so they can communicate telepathically, and they're very good at seeing the future. So Zana makes friends with one of them. It's like her homie on Ruusan. It's helping her survive. And then the Thought Bomb goes off, and most of the Bouncers are driven insane by the death screams of all the Sith and all the Jedi who had been in the blast radius of the Thought Bomb. So all the Bouncers go insane, but Zana uses her natural Force talent to shield her homie, La, from the effects of this blast. So she's walking along with her Bouncer homie. She comes across a Jedi patrol. The Jedi see a Bouncer, and they know, "Oh, fuck, those things are insane now. It's going to try to kill us," so they gun it down first. And this breaks poor Zana's heart, and she gives into the dark side and just snaps the necks of these two Jedi instantly, and then proceeds to cry over her poor dead Bouncer friend. A little while later, Darth Bane comes along and looks at the scene, very quickly puts the pieces together. The Jedi shot the Bouncer. The girl killed the Jedi. And Bane is like, "Damn, did you do this?" And Zana's like, "Yeah." And Bane's like, "Nice. I hate the Jedi too. You want to roll with me?" And Zana's like, "Yeah." So then they team up, and off they go into the galaxy to do their Rule of Two thing. So that's the first book of this series. I'm not going into the second two, because like I said, you really ought to read them. They're some of the best, like, written Star Wars out there. Now, granted, it is technically old canon, but the thing is, Darth Bane has been acknowledged in new canon. His semi-quasi-Force ghost shows up in the Clone Wars, excuse me, to talk to Yoda. And in this particular appearance, Darth Bane is voiced by Mark Hamill, which is fucking awesome, by the way, the story behind that. So, essentially, when they were making the show, they call up Mark Hamill and they're like, hey, you want to voice this character, Darth Bane? And Mark Hamill doesn't really know who Darth Bane is. So he's like, maybe, let me check. And Mark Hamill calls up his son, who is a huge Star Wars fan for obvious reasons. And they're like, hey, they want me to voice this character. His name's Darth Bane. You think I should do it? And Mark Hamill's son is like, yes, Dad. Yes, you should do it. And then Mark Hamill's like, okay. So Darth Bane himself is canon. Now, whether or not the Darth Bane trilogy, which was written in old canon, counts as new canon, I'm not entirely sure, but it'd be really cool if it was. But anyway, yeah, so Darth Bane ends up wiping out the Sith and instituting the Rule of Two, which has effects that will be felt all the way up until Return of the Jedi, obviously. So the reason that, like, the Empire and whatnot failed, at least in my opinion, was that Darth Sidious did not adhere to the Rule of Two. So the way the Rule of Two is supposed to work is there's a master. The master takes an apprentice. The master teaches the apprentice literally fucking everything. Holds nothing back. But has to make sure that the apprentice fucking works hard and earns every single scrap of knowledge the master passes on. So, in theory, what's supposed to happen is the apprentice gets stronger than the master. They fight. Either the apprentice wins and becomes the new master, and then perpetuates the cycle, or the master wins, in which case, well, fuck, that apprentice wasn't strong enough. Well, I guess it's time to find another one. Palpy did not do this. Palpy straight up fucking admits that he killed his master in his sleep. So there is a good chance Darth Plagueis had not taught Palpatine everything he knew at that point, and Palpatine did not end up having to prove it in a 1v1 deathmatch like it's supposed to. And then Palpy goes and takes on multiple apprentices, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In Bane's own words, it's okay to find multiple candidates, but you should definitely make them fight it out to prove who is the strongest candidate and then take that person as an apprentice. Palpy did not do that. Palpy had Darth Maul, Darth Tyrannus, Darth Vader, a bunch of, like, Inquisitors and Force acolytes and shit that he was not necessarily even training up. He was just kind of drip-feeding them what he thought they needed to know, rather than being like, okay, Vader, you fucking earned access to, like, my knowledge of, like, Force precognition and shit like that. Palpy fucked the Rule of Two, and that, in my opinion, that's why Palpy failed. But this video is not about Palpy, it's about Darth Bane. So, yeah, Darth Bane institutes the Rule of Two, which did, 1,000 years later, culminate in the fall of the Jedi and the fall of the Republic, which then led to, you know, Palpy's empire, say whatever good or ill you want to about that. So, who was Darth Bane as a man? So, Darth Bane, I don't think, even before he became a Sith acolyte, while he was still a minor on a Patros, I don't know that you would ever call him a good man. Like, the best iteration, like, I guess psychology or character-wise, the best person version of Darth Bane that we see throughout his life is probably when he is serving in the Sith army with the Gloomwalkers, because he actually has friends and cares deeply about the soldiers under his command, as I feel like any good military leader should. That's like the best person version of Bane I think we get. And then he starts down the rabbit hole of dark sideness and becomes less of a good person once he becomes a full-blown Sith Lord. That said, I would have trouble describing Darth Bane as truly evil. Like, his goals are definitely evil. He wants to wipe out the Jedi and the New Republic for, I think, very understandable reasons for the most part, especially given his background as a minor on a Patros, where, because of a fucking loophole, the Republic's anti-slavery laws could do literally nothing to elevate his situation. Which is why he was totally willing to kill that one guy and then fuck off and serve with the Sith, because what love does he have for the Jedi or the Republic? They never fucking did anything for him or the people he was living with on that planet, so fuck them, right? Not a good reason, but an understandable reason. So, once he became a full-fledged Dark Lord of the Sith, even then, Bane was never really, like, specifically cruel or malicious. He was a very, very harsh teacher to Darth Zana, but at the same time, every time she accomplished something that he set for her, he made sure to praise her, to understand that, like, you know, you are doing good. You're making progress. Yes, I know I'm putting you through literal hell, but you're rising above it as a good Sith should. And he also never went out of his way to, like, develop, like, a quasi father-daughter relationship with Darth Zana. He told her essentially from the get-go that, like, I'm not your dad, I'm your instructor. We're probably not ever likely even going to be friends. You will kill me someday, or I will kill you and find someone else to be my apprentice. He never lied to Zana about his expectations for their relationship or the reality of their training or anything that was going to happen. Like, the closest thing he ever got to that was he gave her this exercise that it was basically a lesson in how to manipulate people. He said, like, go down to this pond. There's these little, like, Jurassic Park compy-looking lizards down there. I want you to bring one back to this camp, and I want it to come willingly. Whether you, like, bait it to the camp, whether you're able to use the Force to mind control it to the camp, doesn't matter. Bring one of those lizards here. So Zana goes and starts hanging out around this pond where these little, I think they're called necks. Yeah, they were called necks. These little necks were hanging out. Like, she did this often enough that they got used to her presence. Then she started bringing them little scraps of food and eventually got one to follow her back to camp willingly, expecting more food. So she rolls up with this neck in tow, and she's thinking that, like, hell yeah, like, Bane's going to be super proud of me. I've accomplished the first lesson. It's going to be awesome. So she shows up. Bane uses the Force to break this thing's neck and then tells her, throw it in the food pot, we're cooking it for stew. She does this, and she's, like, at first upset about this because she had developed an attachment to this little thing. But then she realized what was going on. Like, she accomplished her mission, got the thing here, and then Bane taught her that you shouldn't become too attached to things because things can be taken away from you. You're probably going to do that exact thing. So after she tosses it in the pot, she looks at Bane and goes, I see you decided to teach me 2 lessons today, Master. And this is like the one time in the series that I can recall Bane actually smiling. And he smiles, and I believe the book says he smiles in a way that would reflect like a father being proud of his daughter accomplishing something. But that's the closest they ever get to like father-daughter relationship. It is very much master and apprentice from there on out. So why is Bane being like this a good thing? At least from a Sith perspective. So, like I said, Bane is never, like, he's never cruel, he's never really malicious, he's definitely not a sadist like fucking Palpatine is. Like, he wields dark power, but he wields it for a pragmatic purpose. Like, Bane does some horrific, monstrous shit throughout his lifetime, but he never does it because he simply wants to be a monster. He always does it out of necessity. Like, the worst thing I can recall Bane ever doing is in the first book after he got poisoned, and he's just trying to make his way to this healer to get cured, but he's essentially dying on his feet and using the dark side to sustain himself, but he starts weakening. So he's going across this battlefield, and he needs some dark side force. He needs to juice himself up a little bit. So he leaves his lightsaber out as bait, and then watches as this family comes through and is like scavenging the battlefield looking for shit to probably like sell off or collect or whatever. One of them finds his lightsaber, and it's a fucking kid. So the kid picks up Bane's lightsaber, and his dad's like, oh shit, no, don't touch that. But it's too late. Bane force activates his lightsaber, skewers the fucking kid, and then kills off the other kid of this family unit that is rolling out there looking for shit. And then pauses just long enough for the dad to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you kill my kids? I don't understand. And then Bane like feeds on his anguish and his anger before finally killing the father. But the thing is, Bane had to do that in order to survive. I'm not saying this was a good thing to do. It was absolutely not. This is some like peak evil shit that Bane did. But Bane didn't do it because he wanted to or he thought it would feel good. He did it out of necessity. He was, choosing his own life over the lives of these scavengers, which, like I said, not a good thing. Very evil. But it was evil born out of necessity and not evil born out of, like, cruelty or sadism or shit like that. And that little force bump was enough to keep Bane going long enough to get to the healer. So, yeah, Bane is a pragmatic villain, not a malicious or cruel or sadistic one, which I feel like is a very important thing for Sith to be. So it was Bane's adventures and his approach to the dark side and villainy that, quick sidebar, actually legitimately changed my fucking life. So, when I was a teenager and these books were coming out, I had a bit of an anger issue. Not for any real reason, but just because, I was a fucking teenager, I was growing, and my hormones were out of control. So I had anger issues. And I always loved Star Wars, so generally when I love something like I love Star Wars, I look to it for inspiration and how to, live my own life and shit. So, on the one side, I had Palpy going, give in to your anger, blah, 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 blah. Which obviously is not a good thing to do. I knew that at the time. And then I had the Jedi over on the other side going hey, there is no emotion, there is only peace. That's literally part of the fucking Jedi code, is that, look, just emotion, be done with it. Get rid of it. Don't allow it to influence you. And even back then, I was like, well, that's fucking stupid. That's not how emotions work. I can't just get rid of it. But then finally I came across Darth Bane and his adventures, and he was like, yeah, anger, hatred, all great things for a Sith to have. But you need to rule your emotions, not the other way around. You need to lock down that anger and that hatred, and you need to make it work for you. So, in the Book of Sith by Daniel Wallace, in Darth Bane's writing, he briefly discusses the, I think it's the 7th form of lightsaber fighting style, which is called, in the book, Juyo, which is also the style that Mace Windu uses, in case you were curious. And the crux of this entire form is that you need to have, that anger and that hatred inside of you, and you need to charge it up and go, right to the edge of falling into a mindless berserker rage. But you never take that final step into that berserker rage. So in Darth Bane's writing on this, he briefly says that Juyo is the mastery of control, not the loss of it. And that is an amazing way of thinking, and that's actually what helped me, get a hold on my anger and, actually start to put it toward, constructive purposes rather than just being a mindless, raging, whiny little bitch like I was set to become if I hadn't gotten a handle on things. So, Darth Bane literally changed my life. That's very fucking cool. So, moving on from that, that's why I like Darth Bane as a Sith and as a villain. He's pragmatic about everything. He doesn't do it because it feels good. He doesn't do it because he just wants to be evil and hurt people. He does it because he feels like it is necessary to accomplish his goals. And this extends to basically everything about Bane. Once he picked up Darth Zana, he was like, hey, we need to go underground. We need to go into hiding. We gotta be slow about taking down the Jedi. We can't just be out there going crazy, fucking stacking bodies, because if we do that, the Jedi will find us, will kill us, and then the Sith will well and truly be over. Gotta be on the sly about this stuff. Yes, we can kill a whole lot of people if we feel like it, but we shouldn't, because that's not the way we're gonna get shit done. So, Bane actually, got into, economics and shit, really doing puppet master stuff, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, manipulating people, slowly and, patiently working his way up. He fully accepted the fact that, yes, I want to tear down the Jedi Order and the Old Republic, but I also fully understand that that is not going to happen within my lifetime. That's going to be something for a Sith way down the road to finally enact and do, which, for good or, better or worse, Palpatine actually did take out the Jedi and the New Republic. So, it was 1,000 years later, but hey, Bane's vision did, in some form or another, come to fruition. That's pretty fucking cool. So Bane, as I said at the beginning of this video, is a big motherfucker, and I promised to talk about his curved hilt lightsaber, so I'm going to do that now. So Bane, with his size, strength, and his force ability, is an absolute fucking juggernaut of a fighter. And then this gets even better in book 2 when, for reasons I'm not going to spoil, he temporarily gets himself a lightsaber-proof suit of armor, which allows him to just fucking throw defense out the goddamn window and fucking go ham on his opponents. Like, between him and his apprentice at one point, they take out 3 Jedi Masters and 2 Jedi Knights. One of those Jedi Masters was the Jedi Blade Master, which means that this woman mastered every single form of lightsaber combat, and Bane, just based on his strength, ferocity, and his impregnable suit of lightsaber-proof armor, took her and all of her homies out. And not only was Bane a ferocious fighter, he was a fucking smart one, too. When he was training up Darth Zana, like, you know, she's a young woman who is obviously not going to turn into a 6'6" mountain of muscle like Darth Bane was. Bane was like, yeah, so my lightsaber fighting style is never going to fucking work for you. You're not going to be overpowering your opponents like I am, but we can still play to your strength. So they built Darth Zana a double-bladed lightsaber with shortened blades. And her entire fighting style, I believe it is Form 3 Ataru, which is the lightsaber style that's very heavily based around defensive fighting. So with this style, and with Darth Zana using the Force to augment her stamina, her whole fighting style is like the polar opposite of Bane's. Bane's just run in and fucking massacre, just on brute force alone. But Zana is like, alright, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to wait, I'm going to use my lightsaber to form an impenetrable defense, and just wait until my opponent gets so tired they make a mistake, or I just hold out long enough for Bane to get done doing what he's doing, and then come over and kill these people. So Bane is an incredibly smart fighter, and his lightsaber fits that to a T. So when Kasim gave Bane the curved hilt lightsaber, Bane was like, feels kind of weird in my hand, bro. And then Kasim's like, well, you're going to have to adjust your grip on it a little bit. So most people, when they see curved hilt lightsaber, they think Count Dooku and his masterclass fencing style, which is Form 2, Makashi. Bane used Form 4, Jim So, which is all about that brute force. And the way the curved hilt worked into this lightsaber fighting style was because he had to have a different grip on it than a straight-handled lightsaber, it changes the angle of the blade just enough to be a fucking problem. So Bane might be coming in for like an overhead strike. His opponent might move to, you know, block it head on like they would normally do, but because of Bane's altered grip and the altered angle of the blade, rather than just hitting and going into a blade lock, the blade might hit and then slide down the other blade to where the other person's hand is and then lop their hand off. Like, it's not a huge change to the lightsaber angle, but it's just enough of a change that it's gonna be a fucking problem. So, like, that scene where Bane is fighting the other Jedi Masters, one of them was like, oh shit, look at his fucking lightsaber hilt. And then they all realize, he's probably going to kick our asses if we try to block this guy like we block literally everything else. And then it throws them off enough trying to alter their approach that it's a fucking problem. You know, that and then his fucking impregnable suit of lightsaber armor. Bane was so fucking good at lightsaber combat. I think I'm going to end the video off on this absolutely insane factoid about Bane. So later on in his life, Bane is chilling at his mansion. He wakes up, and he's like, man, I'm feeling a bit stiff. I think I'm going to go out for some morning exercise. So he grabs his lightsaber. He's going to go outside and fucking run through some drills. So as he's out there, he notices, oh, it's about to start raining. All right, challenge accepted. So Bane, having lost the use of his lightsaber armor at this point, also adopted Form 3 into his lightsaber technique, so he could also work on that impregnable defense. So he's outside, it starts raining, and Bane starts whipping his lightsaber around in these intricate patterns so fucking fast that during the time of this short little rainstorm, which it was fucking pouring rain by the way, not a single drop of rain managed to touch Bane's skin. That is how insanely fucking good he is at lightsaber combat. He blocked a fucking rainstorm from hitting him with a single lightsaber. That is fucking incredible. God, Darth Bane is so fucking cool. He's my favorite Star Wars thing, man. I fucking love him to death. As you can tell, because I spent damn near an hour talking about him. Well, on that note, I will bid you all adieu. Thank you for listening. A like and a subscribe would sure be appreciated. I'll see you on the next episode, and as always, have yourself a wonderful day.